cancer takes everything. It's emotional, it's physical, it's financial. It just can tear a family apart.
We've been married close to 40 years. We have 2 grown sons, Brandon, who just celebrated his 36th birthday, and our younger son, Garrett, who is 33.
I'd always struggled my entire life with allergies. But in 2009, I, for some reason in the spring, I started having a sore throat, and it was consistent.
Our second grandchild was due to be born in September. We all went off for a few days, and when we came back, he still was complaining.
Parts of that I remember are that it started out as, well, we just want to treat the sore throat. Maybe you have a cold, maybe it's a virus.
So I decided to go to another doctor. And then he said, you need to go to an ENT.
Kennedy was born on September 14th, 2009. And I found out later that the very next day was the day that they diagnosed my dad with cancer.
Neither one of us had, in all of our wildest dreams, had not expected to hear that word when he went for that appointment that day. I didn't go with him. I went to help bring the baby home. And of course, I regret that to this day, that he had to hear that for the first time by himself.
I was still thinking on that radiation chemotherapy, and that was doable to me. Nobody had ever mentioned about surgery. Nobody had ever mentioned, where the tumor was or anything like that yet.
The ENT doctor called us back and wanted us to come to the office. And not knowing why, we got in the car and went up there. He had looked at the CAT scan, and it was much more serious.
He said, you can go to MD Anderson. He said, or you can go over to LSU, then Shreveport. And he said, I do know that the best surgeon that there is in this part of the country is in LSU, and it's Dr. Nathan.
When I evaluated Robert and specifically looked at his CAT scan, I realized that his tumor had actually invaded through the thyroid cartilage or the Adam's apple into the soft tissues in the neck.
We were not able to take it all in. We just couldn't. It was just too much. Our lives were what we felt like were crumbling right before us.
I knew that if I died from cancer or I died on the operating table, I was only going to die one time. But if I survived, it wouldn't just to be a burden to my family, that I couldn't be a part, that I couldn't be an active member of my family and life, then I was going to die every day for the rest of my life.
I don't think that he'd had a lot of medical problems until he got diagnosed with this advanced stage cancer, which a lot of patients don't. They're hard workers, they've never been sick, and then all of a sudden they're diagnosed with cancer.
I was in tears. Robert was in tears. We were just trying to grasp everything they were telling us and the gravity.
I recommended to Robert that we couldn't save his voice box, and if he was interested in survival, which should be the primary outcome for any cancer patient, his chance of survival was better if I removed his voice box and didn't use chemoradiation as the primary treatment.
When Dr. Nathan talked to me, it wasn't so much the words, it was her conviction. It was her confidence. And it was her compassion that made me make the decision to fight this battle.
Both of us said to each other, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. Knowing full well that we had to do this. We had put Robert in God's hands, and we had put Robert in Dr. Nathan's hands. And we trusted them both.
the plan for the day of surgery was for my mom and dad essentially to get up and take themselves or bring themselves to Shreveport and have the surgery and let us know how it goes, and maybe we can come over after work. But that was never going to happen.
So at 4 o'clock the next morning, when we got ready to leave the house, there was a knock on the door, and it was our oldest son, Brandon. You know, what are you doing here, son? You have a school to go be the principal of. No, can't let my dad go do this without me.
There was never a time in my life where I was in trouble or going through a tough time that my dad didn't show up.
I prepped the family ahead of time about the length of the surgery, because for families to be waiting so many hours, 10 hours, 11 hours, even longer sometimes, is obviously nerve-wracking.
I wasn't ready to let him go. They were ready for him very quickly. And the nurses had told me, we don't know how far you can follow, but follow just till they tell you have to turn back. And I did, because I knew that would be the last time that I ever heard his real voice. That was the last time. And of course, the last words that he spoke before he went was, "I love you."
A laryngectomy and the neck dissections that we did along with it, because the tumor had spread to lymph nodes in the neck, is a very prolonged surgery, because not only do you take the voice box, the lymph nodes, but then you have to reconstruct the eating passage after that.
It was 13 hours later before I got to talk to Dr. Nathan about the success of his surgery.
Kathy is such an expressive, lovely lady. I remember, I think she hugged us, and the family members were crying, and it's amazing to see and be part of that good news to the family.
I survived the surgery, but that's when your battle just starts.
The tumor had eroded through the cartilage into the soft tissues of the neck, and so Robert needed post-op radiation and chemo. And that's really almost as hard, and some of my patients tell me even much worse than the surgery.
It's very difficult. It's very long. The chemo was really rough. It's really tough.
He went through some changes, but the first thing is he couldn't complain about anything. I mean, he couldn't tell us, so that was a positive, I guess, that he couldn't really whine about it if it was bothering him. But he attacked that just like he has everything else.
Robert was a great patient to have. I knew exactly how he was feeling. He had this ability to communicate that. But he was also a very receptive patient.
She did explain to me about a process called a TEP, which was the most promising. She said it doesn't always work for everybody.
Together with speech pathology, there's some preoperative teaching of what is different after a laryngectomy, and then how they're going to have voice rehabilitation and some lifestyle things that they can expect.
When someone has a laryngectomy and they're unable to communicate because, we're all social, we basically need to be able to communicate to each other. So within a matter of months after he finished his treatment, then we brought him in and a surgery was performed to place that puncture. And after he came out of surgery, there was a catheter that was placed, a little rubber tube that was placed into the puncture site.
Didn't take very long, didn't have to stay overnight, had few instructions that we needed to follow, of course, to keep it open for about a week, and made the appointment to come back to see Matt.
I took the tube out, I did the measurements, decided what type of prosthesis to put in, how long it should be, how wide it should be, placed it, and within a matter of a few tries, he was able to start to get a voice.
Matt had asked me He said, "Can you make a sentence? Just anything." And I turned to my wife and I said, "I love you." After 7 months, I was able to tell her I love you.
And we both cried again. We just cried. I think we almost made Matt cry.
It was very gravelly and a little hard to understand, but it was my dad. And
there are no words for me to express how grateful I felt. How just empowered it made me.
There's not a day goes by that he is not grateful for the second life that he's been given.
Advanced stage larynx cancer patients, 50% are dead in 5 years. So it's just nice to know that Robert's doing so well and he's disease-free.
Seeing how well that he did definitely provides encouragement to me as someone who sees other patients that come in just like him to say, I know there's proof that you can get through this.
We're always striving to have better technology, to have better patient outcomes. We're always looking to do something to improve the lives of our patients.
The ability to do research and advance our field so we decrease these recurrence rates and our patients are surviving longer is extremely important.
I am so grateful that our original ENT in Marshall had the knowledge and the forethought to send us to Shreveport, to LSU, to meet Dr. Sherry Nathan and her staff.
I just feel very fortunate and blessed, really, to have patients like Robert and his family, Kathy and other family members be a part of my life, really. I think it also gives me another perspective and makes all the problems we have in our own lives seem minuscule when you see what other patients, what real problems in life are.
I was so thankful. I was so thankful for Dr. Nathan. I was thankful for the hospital. I was thankful to God for giving the grace to save me.